Welcome to Rob Schmitt tonight. Night one of our week-long series, Get Trump, begins tonight. We're about to witness one of the greatest unforced errors in political history as radical left-wing George Soros-funded Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg is set to make history by exposing the United States for the banana republic it is slowly becoming. For the first time in the history of this country, a former president is set to be criminally indicted. Now, if you weren't following the case, you'd likely assume the allegations are very serious. The charges are ironclad. This case is neither. The allegation that former President Trump, while running for president, used his own money to pay a porn star to keep quiet about a one-night stand from nearly 20 years ago. Yes, an unspeakable crime of that nature. Far worse than, say, enriching your entire family by taking money from this country's enemies. The charge is as lackluster as the description, falsifying business records for the unthinkable act of recording the payments as having been for a legal retainer. It appears Trump derangement syndrome has finally bled into our criminal justice system, the absolute desperation to destroy the man who exposed the broken and corrupted machine that is Washington, D.C., has now led us to this moment. And it is a big moment. Potentially a massive misstep by the bloodthirsty anti-Trump left, a moment that could dramatically alter this country and the way we are perceived by the rest of the world. The New York Times' Maggie Haberman, who covered Trump extensively, could not hide her skepticism for this entire case on cable TV this weekend. Take a look.
We're entering uncharted territory here.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's important to note about this case, as Kara said, this is a misdemeanor that they're trying to push up to a felony.
Which is a really kind of
exotic. It's an exotic
yes.
case. And a judge could decide, no, we're going to knock it back to a misdemeanor.
An exotic case. That's how Maggie describes something she'd love to see while knowing it's wholly unlawful and outrageous. And that's how most of the left is treating this case. If these charges were brought against a Democrat, they'd be incensed. But it's fun to watch Trump be tortured by political persecution. We hate him, throw him in prison because he's so awful. This is how the modern left in this country operates. The radicals have taken over. The liberals who once stood up to this kind of insanity have effectively been silenced. No media organization better illustrates what's happened to the American left better than the New York Times. This is full of journalists giddy at the thought of throwing their political opposition in gulags. The Times explaining what's likely coming and how it could become a felony, they hope, saying in New York, falsifying business records can amount to a crime, albeit a misdemeanor. To elevate the crime to a felony charge, Bragg's prosecutors must show that Trump's intent to defraud included an intent to commit or conceal a second crime. In this case, that second crime could be a violation of New York state election law. While hush money is not inherently illegal, the prosecutors could argue that the $130,000 payout effectively became an improper donation to Trump's campaign under the theory that because the money silenced Ms. Daniels, it benefited his candidacy. That is how they plan to indict the first president in American history. That's what they have. Ironically, it'll be the first time Alvin Bragg has ever tried to maliciously enhance a charge. Bragg, who received $1 million from George Soros and carries out his far-left agenda that destroys our society, is notorious for reducing charges against the violent and despicable criminals that are destroying New York and many other cities in this country. Bragg has downgraded more than half his felony cases to misdemeanors since taking office on January 1. Bragg has downgraded 52% of felony cases. Grieving mothers in Harlem have Alvin Bragg to thank for rampant gun violence and street crime. Even Ron DeSantis, who's likely running against Donald Trump in the 2024 primary, called out Alvin Bragg in this case.
If you have a prosecutor who is ignoring crimes happening every single day in his jurisdiction, and he chooses to go back many, many years ago to try to use something about porn star hush money payments, that's an example of pursuing a political agenda and weaponizing the office. And I think that that's fundamentally wrong.
So you've got Alvin Bragg, who reduces the charges in almost every case, can't wait to let people out of jail. But there is one crime so salacious that even Alvin Bragg cannot stomach to drop the charges or reduce them. That would be falsifying business records, apparently, a crime so obscene there can be no leniency. And we really see how insane this moment is when we look at the current president of the United States who's in the office right now. A man whose family members receive bank wires from China, clearly influence peddling payoffs. Congressman James Comer sent us these screenshots of the redacted bank wires just today. Millions of dollars from the Communist Party of China going through a pass-through account before being dispersed into the personal bank accounts of Hunter and Haley and Jim and, of course, Joe Biden. Big Joe, of course, gets half, according to Hunter's emails. But they're going after Trump for money for something that happened 17 years ago. Here's how the sitting president responded last week when asked about undeniable evidence of mass sums of money paid directly to his family by the Chinese Communist Party.
Hunter Biden's business associates sent over $1 million to 3 of your family members. Any reaction to that report?
It's not true. Just not true. What a country. I guess Joe Biden is lucky he never paid to silence Tara Reade for her sexual assault claims, but of course he never had to. The media did that for him. Welcome to the United States in 2023. Blatant corruption is now acceptable for the ruling party, and the opposition can't toss a cigarette butt out the window of a moving car. Obama hid the source of almost $2 million in campaign funds, was only hit with a fine of about 1/5 of the total amount. Hillary paid to create a dossier to destroy Trump as a political hit job. She got a small fine. But of course, for Donald Trump, it's a different story. It always has been. Constitutional scholar and known liberal Alan Dershowitz just released a new book called Get Trump, which explains why this situation is so dangerous. In the book, he says it is precisely because so many decent people honestly believe that a second Trump presidency would endanger our nation that it is difficult to persuade them that their attacks on our cherished constitutional rights will cause enduring, perhaps irredeemable harm to our liberties. This is why the media and permanent Washington spent so much time labeling Trump as a threat to democracy, so they could physically assail him in full view of the public and get away with it. This is why every single day of Donald Trump's presidency was a full-blown crisis, because they needed it to be. It had to be a crisis. What's about to happen to Trump doesn't happen in places like the United States. It happens in Brazil, like we just saw with Jair Bolsonaro, or in Pakistan, where just last week we told you the story of the former President Imran Khan, the charming populist cricket player who stood up to Pakistan's swamp and won the hearts of the people and then was removed with a corrupted middle-of-the-night no-confidence vote. Khan has a staggering 60% approval rating right now, but is under assault by the government and banned from running for prime minister. It's a standard playbook all around the world in corrupted countries, and it appears we're about to see it here in the United States.